Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Ammon, and I serve as president of the Louisville Forum. We meet on the second Wednesday of every month at Vincenzo's Restaurant. The Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public issues group founded in 1984. The Forum hosts debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. Although we may take up an issue that is of national interest, we try to highlight the local perspective. For more information on the Louisville Forum, our programs, or to make reservations, please visit our website at louisvilleforum.org. Well into their second season in the United States Soccer League, Louisville City FC has proven they can attract a crowd with an average home league attendance of 6,765 people. Currently, the team plays their home games at Louisville Slugger Field, but is exploring the possibility of building a soccer stadium. Mayor Fisher has commissioned a study on the feasibility of constructing a soccer-specific stadium for the Louisville City FC. It is the goal of both Fisher and the Louisville City FC officials to grow the franchise into an option for Major League Soccer as it eventually expands to 28 teams. The study will explore financing options and physical sites. According to an ESPN poll, Major League Soccer is as popular with 12 to 17-year-olds as Major League Baseball. There are a lot more children and teens playing soccer now. The U.S. Soccer Organization says that participation is 30 times higher now than it was 40 years ago. The Wall Street Journal noted that youth participation in soccer is double that of tackle football and larger than baseball by about 1 million participants. How does that translate for our city? Can professional soccer score in Louisville? We're proud to have 3 panelists here to discuss the future of professional soccer in Louisville. Amanda Duffy is the president of Louisville City FC, Jeff Mosley, Deputy Chief of Louisville Forward, and Jim Waters, the President of the Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy Solutions. Our first speaker today is Amanda Duffy. Amanda is the Louisville City FC President and has been with the club since October of 2014. Amanda joined the club as Vice President of Operations and was promoted to General Manager in December of 2014. Following the club's successful inaugural campaign, which saw the club reach the Eastern Conference Final and boast the league's second highest average attendance, Amanda was promoted to president in November of 2015. Previously, Amanda worked at United Soccer Leagues, the league headquarters in which Louisville City FC is a member for 7.5 years. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I look forward to sharing the next hour with everyone and talking about the future of soccer in Louisville. I'll start with, by a show of hands, who has been to a Louisville City game? Excellent. For those of you that have not, no excuses going forward. I invite you to this Saturday's match or any match, home match coming up this season. Free tickets from me. Please let me know when that would work, as I think you'll come out and you'll tremendously enjoy the experience and environment that you'll have at Slugger Field for a soccer match. I've been a part of soccer for more than 30 years as a player, as a coach, as an administrator, and an executive. I was a part of USL at a point when it transitioned to what we see today as a professional league. Its period of growth and partnership with Major League Soccer, and at the same time as Major League Soccer became a sport and a league that competed with the top 4, the big 4 Major League sports across North America. It's a growing sport. It is a #1 participatory sport at the youth levels and even the adult levels. And so as we've seen the sport grow here in the United States, as it continues to match what is happening around the world on a global scale, we've also seen here in Louisville that there is an opportunity for the professional game to be successful here in Louisville. We did have the second highest average attendance last year at our home matches. We reached the Eastern Conference Championship, successful on the field, led by our head coach, James O'Connor, and we look forward to continuing that pace this year in our second season, currently sitting on top of the standings, #1 in the Eastern Conference, and actually across both conferences, leading in points and standings right now. This growth and this success that we have is translated into community engagement, corporate engagement, and as we continue to build on what we're doing, we're going to continue to expand in those arenas as well. We appreciate everyone's support, look forward to growing soccer here in Louisville and across the United States. Thank you again for having me.
With a background in finance, law, and economic and real estate incentive development, Jeff Mosley serves as Deputy Chief of Louisville Forward. Jeff previously was the General Counsel for the Kentucky Finance and Administration Cabinet and the Department of Revenue, where he worked on Kentucky Kingdom and the KFC Yum Center projects. He previously worked in the State Transportation Cabinet and in Workforce Development. Please welcome Jeff.
Thank you very much. It is my first time at the forum and glad to be here. I'm here to talk a little bit about kind of where the city is and given the success of Louisville City, what the future and the city's analysis and of the future of professional soccer. By all accounts, the first season of LCFC in 2015 was a resounding success. And they have over 2,700 season ticket holders in their first year, as 6,700 in attendance on the average, and we believe that their ability to grow their fan base is only going to increase as we go forward. So given all this momentum and just the great vibe that it's created and the fact that soccer is the choice of the youth of today, and especially of the millennial 18 to 34 age group demographic that our economic development team is desiring to attract to not only retain in the city but also come and live in the city. The city commenced a study and hired a group called CSL, which is Convention Sports and Leisure. They are a nationwide company and specialize in these in-depth profiles of cities and what the analysis is and what the empirical evidence would be to not only gauge the ability to support and build a soccer-specific stadium, but also to inquire about the city's ability to potentially take the next leap and acquire or be in the running for an MLS team. Much work and analysis has to go into those factors. Some of the things that they're looking at, and their study will be finished in the next 30 to 60 days, and that we asked them to specifically look at was Louisville's ability to sponsor the team, basically the market sponsorship. Site selection of a stadium is obviously critical, and then a general analysis of the city's demographics. And once that information all comes in, we will then begin to try to put together a deal that the city feels comfortable with. So let me talk about that a little bit. Once the evidence and the numbers come in from the study, so we know what we're dealing with the city, the mayor and the Metro Council will have a discussion about, is this something that we want to do? Is this something our citizens want to engage in? Is this something we're willing to potentially go into debt for, to issue a bond and then pay back? And some of the factors that we will certainly consider in this analysis are the amount of private participation in the stadium, the cost of the stadium, including land acquisition, the structure of the ownership group and their wishes and desires, the thoughts and desires of our Metro Council, and then the programming of the stadium. One of the things that soccer is a little unique with is that if we did a soccer-specific stadium, on the best year for just soccer-related professional events, you can only fill the stadium about 20 dates. The regular season for soccer is about 15 to 16 dates, and then we try to get a couple exhibition games, or if there's any playoff games that Louisville City is able to participate in. So the programming piece of the stadium is critical. So obviously 20 dates is not going to generate enough revenue to fund this stadium. So, you'd look at concerts and other types of, high school events or other events that we would draw crowds to that would generate revenue for the stadium. So that is a huge piece of this analysis, is the programming of the stadium. And then finally, the last thing that we're looking at, or we will be looking at, is who operates the stadium. I think the mayor's office and the economic development department believe that either having the team operate it or a group like AEG, who runs the arena, would be appropriate to run the stadium. They're the ones that are keyed in and plugged into the event sector, and they're the ones more likely to generate the events. The city certainly does believe that soccer is an economic development tool, and it will assist us in the attraction and retention of folks. As I said earlier, the preliminary figures from the LCFC's first year indicated that over 50% of their attendees were in the 18 to 34 age group, and that they also attended more than one game. Also, preliminary figures indicate that 37% of the LCFC attendees attended up to 11 to 15 games, and I believe they only had 16 home games or something like that. So the point being that the soccer fan is a dedicated fan, that they come back. And part of our economic development strategies is to increase the density of downtown. And we've got a lot of great projects that are demonstrating that, leading off with the Omni project that is being built at 3rd and Liberty. So anyway, we really do believe that soccer is a catalyst for economic development. We think that everything that Amanda and LCFC are doing helps us in our ability to attract and retain the age group that we're looking for to stay in Louisville. So really, in closing, at least my initial remarks, we think soccer does have a future in Louisville. We're going to wait and see till the evidence comes in. We're going to analyze it and weigh it, and we'll see if there is a role for the city to play. But given the first year, and given the rise of soccer, and given everything else that is going on with soccer, we do believe that there would hopefully be a role for the city to play and bring this new venue to our citizens. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jim Waters. Jim is president at the Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy Solutions. Waters has spent more than 2 decades in newspaper and radio stations as a reporter, editor, and anchor. Since coming to the Institute in 2003, Waters' articles have been published statewide and in national publications, including the Wall Street Journal. He also appeared on CNN television. Waters' weekly column, The Bluegrass Beacon, appears in newspapers across the Commonwealth, including the Paducah Sun, Elizabethtown News Enterprise, the Danville Advocate Messenger, and Corbin Times Tribune. Please welcome Jim Waters.
Well, thank you all. It's good to be back at the Louisville Forum, and I want to thank my fellow panelists as well today for including us in this discussion. Not only do I believe, as the question for the forum was, that professional soccer can score in Louisville. We've already been hearing today a little bit about how it is doing that, and I was impressed in reading about these 2,000 Louisville Coopers. Are there any Louisville Coopers here today? There's 2,000 of them here in the city, but they were described by one publication as being, quote, known for nonstop chanting, colorful tifo displays, and undying support of the club, showing a spirit and devotion typically associated with fans of large clubs worldwide. Now that is commitment. The growth of soccer also can be seen just in the past few years here, since the Louisville Lightning, the indoor soccer team, suspended their operations. Since that time, soccer attendance increased from about 1,000 per match with the Louisville Lightning. They were really struggling to get to 1,000 per match, actually, to, as we heard, almost 7,000 per game attendance just 3 short years later. I think all of that indicates a great interest in soccer, that its interest as a Louisville sport is not only growing, but growing by leaps and bounds. However, just like official international soccer rules, and I looked up the soccer rules because I have to admit I know a little more about Major League Baseball and the NFL than I did some of the soccer rules, but one of the international soccer rules actually says, and I quote, that goals must be scored. They cannot be awarded by the referee. So my point is today that the advancement and development and all associated risks of professional soccer here in Louisville, we believe, should depend solely on the private sector, that taxpayer dollars should not be used to build a soccer facility, that this should be done by the private sector where it's obvious that interest is growing greatly. And that way, you see, if I'm wrong about whether there's enough buy-in for a new stadium, then we won't have the equivalent of, and bear with me, I wanted to use one other soccer term just because I felt good about learning some of these terms, but a 50-50 ball. You know what a 50-50 ball is? So we want to avoid that. That's a bad thing. A 50-50 ball at midfield is, in this case, where taxpayers would be forced to subsidize the team or its facilities, whether or not soccer is a high priority for them individually. In fact, with such growing interest in the sport, I have to wonder why taxpayers already have been asked to spend more than $500,000 on soccer locker rooms at the team's current pitch and $75,000 for this study, the whole process of which I have to say looks to me like an on-field version of the game show Jeopardy, where contestants already know the answer but only have to come up with the questions. Local governments, government at any level for that matter, really can't know for sure. Our mayor here said, and I quote, "A new soccer stadium could have many positive impacts on our economy." Could. Well, a recent report by the Taxpayers Protection Alliance on taxpayer-subsidized NFL stadiums show that at the very least there is no direct correlation between building a new stadium and economic growth. And in most cases, new sports facilities have had the opposite effect of their intentions on the areas and on the hardworking taxpayers who pay for them. Between 1995 and 2013, U.S. median household income, which is adjusted for inflation here, rose 0.3%. However, it plummeted like a drop-kick ball by nearly 6% in the 12 counties in America where taxpayers funded more than half of the cost of constructing a new NFL stadium. In those same counties during that same time period, the percentage of the total population living in poverty rose from 16 to 18.7%. That's a 231% increase over the national average, which rose during that time from 13.8 to 14.5%. So my point being is, if it doesn't work with stadiums in the NFL, which, with all apologies to the Louisville Coopers and all of the soccer fans, NFL is still, I would say, America's most popular sport, at least for the time being. Where's the evidence that it will work any better with soccer stadiums? Plus, I'm not really convinced that a new facility would actually bring new dollars into the community, as we've heard. I think it's more likely that it would move existing dollars around. So it would add choices to how people spend their disposable income. The choice would be whether we go to a movie, out to dinner, take in a U of L game, maybe a Bats game, or go to the soccer match. U of L economics professor Jose Fernandez told a reporter earlier this year that lack of economic benefits of sports venues has become clear. He said, and I quote, "Several independent studies have found no statistically significant positive relationship between sports facility construction and economic development." And I continue to quote him. He said, quote, "This result is contrary to most results from promotion consultants, but let's face it, it is their job to find positive economic impacts," end quote. Finally, I think there's a popular myth that these types of facilities cannot be built without public dollars. However, that's not true. MetLife Stadium, where the NFL's Jets and Giants both play, and the most expensive second largest NFL stadium ever constructed, it was built totally with private money and with no corporate welfare. If a $1.6 billion NFL stadium with 82,566 seats can get built by the private sector, then I think taxpayers should not be asked to pay for a 10,000-seat soccer stadium. I have a friend in Washington who's such a huge DC United fan that he's a season ticket holder. He loves soccer. And I was talking to him about this issue, and he said recently there was a petition circulated among all of the DC United season ticket holders and fans asking them to sign a petition supporting the use of public dollars to build a new soccer stadium. However, he refused to sign that, not because he doesn't like soccer, he obviously loves it, and not because he wouldn't enjoy a new soccer stadium. He said it would be great to have a new soccer stadium. But he said, I understand that this is not a priority with taxpayers. The taxpayers' hard-earned money should be spent wisely and with higher priority. So, while we all love to hear the roar of the crowd, I think it's very important that every tax dollar that Kentuckians send to Washington, to Frankfort, or to City Hall be spent wisely on real priorities and not sports stadiums. I'm all for sports stadiums. I love sports. I started out in journalism as a sports writer. I'm all for it. But I just don't think public dollars should be used to build these facilities. Instead, I think roads need to be repaired here in this community and pensions need to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And now we'll move into our question portion of the meeting. And you do have questionnaires in the center of your table. So if you have any questions, people will be around to collect them. And we'll start with Ed Henson.
Be combining two questions here. First is, since the MLS has talked about expansion recently, they put out a list of cities that they were kind of on their short list. Louisville was not on the short list. Is minor league play enough to justify public investment in a property? And with regards to getting an MLS franchise with several regional cities, St. Louis, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis competing for an MLS franchise, how can the city of Louisville differentiate itself in a race for a bid? And this morning when I was looking at the MLS standings, I noticed that you had like Chicago and Columbus, but there really weren't a lot of cities in our region, such as Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Nashville, and St. Louis. Would we be competing with those cities? And if so, how can we differentiate ourselves? And it's mainly to Amanda, but anyone else who would like to address.
As far as differentiation with us as a city, a few of the key factors that we like to keep in mind here, yes, there is a regional aspect to the opportunity that we have here in Louisville. Looking to the nearest MLS city is Chicago, and we have seen that other cities, other markets are included on the list that's currently circulating in the soccer media as far as upcoming expansion. One of the benefits we feel like for excuse me, Louisville is the aspect that we're not competing against another major league sport here in this market, and the regional growth that Major League Soccer has indicated they want to see here in this region, this Midwest region, to fill in some holes. Obviously Columbus also being a near team, Major League Soccer, but Columbus, Crew, Chicago Fire, Kansas City, fills in some regional gaps that they've indicated is a priority for them going forward. So those are some key differentiators that we see from Louisville City that will give us an opportunity to be included in the conversation. For us as a USL franchise right now, if you look back to recent Major League Soccer expansion, you can go back and see that Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Portland Timbers, Montreal Impact, Orlando City all came out of out of USL before joining Major League Soccer, most recently Sacramento Republic. Their path of doing that is being the best USL team that was operating at that time, and we're able to move forward into the MLS ranks. We also see that as our path to be the best USL operated team, #1 in all categories and areas, and use the differentiators that we see in this market to move us forward over the next several years into that Major League Soccer conversation.
I'll try to address the first part of your question. So when we have had discussions with MLS officials, they have basically said there's three legs to the stool to get an MLS team. The first one is you have to have a dynamic and very rich ownership group. The second one is you have to have people that are running your show that know soccer. I think we certainly have that with Amanda. And the final one is you have to have a soccer-specific stadium. So if you don't have a soccer-specific stadium, preferably downtown, then you will not be on the list. And you don't have to have it built, but you have to have it planned. So those are kind of the legs to the stool that we're shooting for to get done.
I had a question about possible soccer-specific facilities. I understand that the University of Louisville has one of the premier venues for a college soccer program in the country. It's got a seating capacity of, I think, around 5,500 seats there. And I understand the need here is to have a facility where you can benefit from the concession sales and all of the in-stadium revenue that comes, and that's hard to do when you're paying $20,000 a match to the Sluggers to use their field. So I'm wondering what the feasibility would be of expanding and working with that stadium that already exists, since you have about 18 home games a year. What's the possibility of using that facility and the MLS agreeing that would fit their criteria?
And, that's actually was one of our next questions. So we'll just thank you for doing that, and we'll turn it over to Amanda.
Hey, great minds.
I appreciate that. So maybe we'll turn it over to get other comments on that as well. Whether or not the U of L stadium could be used.
That option was explored prior to my arrival with the club. That option was explored. That's a stadium that's owned and operated by the university. So, #1, the approval to use that stadium was not granted. #2, when we look at what we're trying to achieve in focusing on our growth and keeping consistent and in line with what would keep us a part of the conversation with Major League Soccer, is being in the downtown area, being a part of the urban core and urban development of downtown. As Jeff mentioned, the priorities with the soccer-specific stadium, Major League Soccer has indicated they want it to be a part of the downtown growth of that particular market. Our average attendance last year was 6,700. If you look at the last 8 games of our season last year, we were above 7,500 with our average attendance. For us, moving into a stadium that is not downtown and wouldn't fit the capacity that we're currently bringing in at Slugger Field, it wouldn't make sense for us to look at that as an option right now to continue our growth as a team.
More questions about the stadium, but this having to do, having to do more with financing. Several questions, in fact, having to do, the gist of the questions is that the city of Louisville is paying, according to this questioner, $10 million a year to help out with the Yum Center, to subsidize U of L athletics. Another questioner refers to the Yum Center financing as a disastrous fiasco. So you get the tone of the questions, a little concern about whether or not we can secure or expect the city to be able to secure financing, and whether or not it will be a good deal if indeed there is financing secured.
I guess the answer to that is it really depends on the deal. I mean, I think most people would say that the Bats, the city owns Louisville Slugger Field. The city bonded that, and I believe the bonds are either just about to be paid off or have been paid off. And I think most people would say that Louisville Slugger Field, under that financing scenario has been a huge success. Understand the the part about the arena and the TIF structure and all that. It's a little more complicated, and depending on how you look at it, you could certainly entertain the notion that the burden to the city is strong. However, but I think there has to be certainly a private component to a stadium, a soccer stadium. I don't think the city is prepared or would ask Metro Council to even consider approving a deal where we're in it for the whole thing. But it really just depends on the whole deal, and it depends on how it's structured, what the private participation is, what the projected revenues are, and how much utilization we can make out of this stadium.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I appreciate those comments, but I'm not. I guess I don't necessarily support the idea that Slugger Field is a success because public dollars were used or there was bonds issued to build it. I don't think there's any thing to say that wouldn't have been also a success if no taxpayer dollars had been used to build that. So if it's something that the community wants, then I think they will find a way to pay for it. And on the Yum Center Arena, it's not just the TIF that's a problem there. It's lower than expected revenues. All stadiums like that around the nation have a pro tenant, a professional team that is the anchor tenant. And that's one of the reasons why that's not working. So, but the Louisville Arena Authority is losing about $10 million a year on that facility. The University of Louisville Athletic Association, they got a great deal on that lease. They're making about $30 million a year because they get all of the revenue from concessions and so forth. So whoever worked out that deal for the University of Louisville Athletic Association did a great job for the association, but it's a raw deal for the Arena Authority and for taxpayers.
One more stadium question, and that has to do with the possibility of the use of local option to help fund the stadium. Thoughts?
Well, certainly LIFT, the local option tax, has been one of Mayor Fisher's primary legislative agenda items that has not passed the last two sessions of the General Assembly. I think it would be an excellent item to be a LIFT item because it clearly is specific, and at the end of the day, you could see what your dollar's paid for. So I think it would be a great item for LIFT.
I guess the problem with that is if you use those dollars for that, they're not available for other types of projects that maybe would be of higher priority. I mean, really, if you think about it, a soccer stadium here would seat probably, 10,000? I'll be liberal and say 20,000, maybe 15 to 20,000. But what ends up happening if you use public dollars on that is you really have hundreds of thousands of tax-paying citizens here supporting the project that maybe 20,000, 30,000 people want. So if we were to do the LIFT, my understanding is that would be for projects that would be high priority with the greatest number of citizens. I would also suggest that you all begin to put some pressure on your legislative caucus, both legislative caucuses, both parties, to begin to be able to keep more of the money that you've been sending to Frankfurt. You've been sending much more money to Frankfurt than you've been getting back, whereas many communities in Kentucky are getting back more than they spend. And so there are needs here in this community, but I'm not convinced that the way to meet those needs is with a tax increase.
And just on behalf of our ownership as well, there's obviously we're waiting and anticipating the results that will come back from the CSL study in the next 30 to 60 days, as Jeff had indicated. But our ownership also anticipate bearing a significant amount of the cost of the stadium. There is not an anticipation or expectation right now of any measure until we get results back from the study on what the recommendation is going to be on how we can make this work. And in evaluating how other stadiums, obviously a lot of many soccer-specific stadiums have been built in the last 5 to 7 years, mostly due to Major League Soccer's requirement for all teams to be in soccer-specific stadiums. There are a lot of avenues and options that we'll be looking at on how we achieve a soccer-specific stadium, starting out in a capacity of 8 to 10,000, and with having the ability to expand as needed.
And I think another point is that, you know, the soccer stadium that people don't know in these deals is if, you know, what would it, if the city or the public sector hadn't stepped in and was the final piece to the deal, if the deal couldn't get done without the public support, then there'd be no Louisville Slugger Field or similar venue. I think that is the key point that you have to analyze as well. And you have to analyze it with the structure that you think that the private sector is not going to be in any further than what it ultimately comes to be in. So that's when you get to the factor of, you know, do you want it that bad to have it or not, and is it justified enough to use public support? I will tell you that the statistics right now on the USL stadiums that currently exist, over 62% are publicly owned, just as a thought.
And just for the people at the panel, feel free to just answer the questions from your seat if you'd like to. You're welcome to get up if you need to stretch, but feel free to just use the microphone there at your seat. We had several questions that, it may be too early at this point, Jeff, especially for you, about, I know you're waiting on the study, but people are very curious about the location. What are the primary locations that are being proposed for the stadium? Does the city view the old River Road Country Club site as a downtown site or a viable site? If so, why and why not? And then I guess for Amanda, does the soccer club have a soccer stadium site preference? And if so, where and why? So are you able to say anything at all about possible locations that are being looked at?
All I can say about the sites are that the consultant was provided several sites. The city believes that the soccer stadium, if it gets built, should be downtown, but we can't disclose any of the specific sites that we're considering.
As far as for Louisville City and any preferences that we might have, obviously we are also waiting for feedback from CSNL and the results that they have. What we have noticed with our fans, supporters, and experience on game day is it's been a benefit to be downtown. We enjoy being in an area where there's walkability to restaurants, to bars, other activities and events going on both prior to and following our matches. So we've seen that to be a benefit. And of course, in pursuing the goals and conversations that we want to be a part of, we feel there is a need to be in a downtown area, in a downtown location with a stadium.
I think we can anticipate that based on similar projects in other cities, that soccer stadium here would cost probably at minimum $13 to $15 million. And if you look at others, you know, a 15,000 seat stadium in Hartford, Connecticut was more than that. A stadium in Salt Lake City was a little bit less. I guess I'd like to say if we're really bent on spending public dollars on soccer, I wonder if we shouldn't use that money to build lots of soccer fields around the city, including in the West End and areas that we're talking about in the urban core areas, and make it possible for lots of people to benefit directly from that spending. That would be another idea that I would have in terms of how to use dollars like that.
And Jim, just to make sure, did you say 13 to 15 million?
Right.
As being the projected total cost?
Well, I'm just, we don't know what this,
Sure.
we don't know what this study is going to say, but based on similar projects in other cities and of similar size, you know, I would say very conservatively, at the least, we're looking at $10 million. I guess, too, I would take issue with if, you know, like if a certain amount of the money can be raised privately, then the city should come in and fund the rest of it. Again, I think that money would be better spent benefiting many more people than just one specific project.
In a follow-up question for Jeff and Amanda, when you say downtown, what's your definition of downtown? How do you perceive that? Basically, downtown can be a pretty big area. What are you thinking?
My general understanding of what the central business district is.
Okay.
Don't hold me to every street, but in my general understanding.
I agree with Jeff on that.
A couple more questions regarding use of a stadium. There were comments made earlier about possibly having other events at the proposed new stadium, including concerts and the like. As we all know, there have been a lot of concerts at the Yum Center over the years. On the other hand, one questioner notes that Slugger Field was built 10 years ago, or more, 15 years ago, I think. And there have been just only, he says, 5 concerts. Bottom line, there have been very few at Slugger Field. So is it a reality to expect concerts, yet another outdoor stadium? Is it a reality to expect concerts to help fund the new stadium?
That's a great question, because in the pro formas I've kind of looked at, the concert piece was pretty small for that exact reason. And typically, from the people we've talked to, the concerts that do best at these soccer stadiums are not just one concert. They're more like festivals, for 2 and 3 day festivals, similar to what we have on like Louder Than Life and a couple other things we have. So my understanding is that in Columbus, the Columbus Crew, the MLS team, has one of the most revenue-producing 3-day festivals. I can't remember what it's called, in July of every year. So it would be relatively, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't conflict with the Yum Center crowd or any of the other crowds like that. It would be more the festival concert market, is what I'm told.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the point I was trying to make earlier about, I don't think this necessarily would bring in new dollars. I think it would bring more choices for people to spend what dollars they do have.
One other question having to do with location, a stadium, and Mr. Waters, you had mentioned, numerous fields maybe around the city as an alternative. Has there been any thought given to something of a soccer complex where there is a stadium for the team to play, as well as additional fields where AAU-type teams and other teams could be brought in from around the region to play weekend competitions and the like?
There has been, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau is actually conducting a study that's a couple months behind this study on a sports complex for soccer and other field hockey, lacrosse, other sports like that. And one of the challenges when they're, as I understand it, when they talk about those type of studies is, how many fields, are they strictly rectangular, or do you go out and do baseball? Because obviously on rectangular fields you can play soccer, lacrosse, and field hockey, whereas baseball and softball require different dimensions. So, and whatever field space is available. So there has been thought. I know the sports complex, and there's a lot of people in this community that think that we've left a lot of money on the table with not having a sports complex in this community. Given our central location and our drivability, our easy access, we would be the perfect destination site for all of these tournaments, soccer tournaments, baseball tournaments, whatever they are. I know probably a lot of you, like myself, travel with travel teams for your kids, and there's not a whole lot around here from that perspective. So that nut is trying to be cracked by the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
I also think one of the more exciting things, aspects, a part of the success that we had last year was the opportunity for the CVB to come in and initiate this study for a sports complex. We had a significant amount of private dollars invested into the facility that we're using, the training grounds that we're using currently, because of the lack of fields and facilities that we had access to in Louisville. So for that opportunity to come, having played, having been a part of this sport at a youth level, both as a player and a coach, understanding the value that comes to be able to host soccer tournaments where you bring in outside guests, visitors over a 2-3 day period of time or longer. I think this is one of the more exciting aspects of what's happening right now, and I think a small part of that has to do with the success of Louisville City for this conversation to be started about the facilities itself. I will say from a combination of stadium and training facility at same location, I don't see that as a need, although there are some aspects of it that make it easier with having all things on one site, one location. There's also the stadium is the place that we want to be in the right location where it's right for the fans, and also from a player standpoint, thinking about coming in on game day, there's an excitement factor to coming to this location on game day as well, not being the location they're at day in and day out. So we don't necessarily see it as a need that the training facility and the stadium need to be on one site in one location. And in evaluating other USL and MLS arrangements, they are not all, many of them are set up where they have their own training facility at a suburban location with a stadium in a more urban location.
Yeah, I was just thinking here, I think FC is spending, I think it was $20,000 per match to at Slugger Field to deal with the pitching mound there and to get the field ready for play. And, I just did a little math here, and I'm working under the old math approach here, but if you have a stadium that costs $10 million and you play 18 matches a year, so over a period of 20 years, that's 360 matches, and if my math is right, that comes out to costing about a little less than $28,000 per match. So it sounds like to me that if you could get the financing privately, and I think there's probably people in this room that could help with that, get private financing for the stadium, you could possibly have that paid off in less than 30 years, 25 years, using just pretty much what you're spending right now to pay Slugger Field. So.
One of the reasons given in support of this project is that Louisville is one of the largest markets in the country without a major league professional sports team. Yet, doesn't the University of Louisville men's basketball and football teams, don't they really function as a professional team in terms of corporate support, luxury suites, and media attention? So is that example that we don't have a professional sports team, are we taking into account the impact of the University of Louisville sports?
Well, they don't. I would say no. I mean, that's not the same. You take an NBA team, for example. How many games a season do they play? It's way more than a college team would play. So just the number of home games they have and the revenue they would bring in there would be no comparison on that. And then with corporate sponsorship, I think it's great for college, at the college level. I think it's really great here. But you're talking about a whole nother level with professional sports.
And I would say, while we do have no question two of the more sophisticated and money-generating universities for sports in the NCAA, there's no comparison to the professionals from the revenues that they generate.
We'd also agree with that from a corporate level, we don't view the universities as a major league professional level where we'd want to achieve.
I just remember when we did programs like this 12 years ago about the NBA here at the Louisville Forum, that was given as a reason not to have an NBA team that would be competing with the University of Louisville in terms of corporate dollars and luxury suites. So now we're hearing a different argument.
Well, you just have the sheer number of games that are played. This is really simple to understand, okay? It's easy to understand. You take just the sheer number of games, many, many more games, which means many more tickets sold, much more revenue, much more opportunity for corporate sponsorship. There's the media packages that come with that. All of that really is at a higher level, I would say.
I would agree.
If Louisville does not make the cut here in this next round, as one of the cities to be expanded, can you project 4 or 5 years down the road, what's the future of the current team, the current franchise, and what's the future at that point? Is there more hope in terms of moving into the major leagues, or is this it?
I think you have to look at the sport as a whole over the last 20 years, and then when you really narrow down into the last 5 years and see the growth of what's happened of the sport as a whole. Looking back 5 years ago, I was working at USL. This league had 6 teams in it. USL, as it was in that day, had 6 teams in it, and now this year, in 2016, operating with 29 teams. Major League Soccer was not in the position that it was 5 years ago. So when you see the growth and look at the evolution of it, just in the last 5 to 7 years, it's going in, the trajectory of the sport is going very rapidly to a place that I don't think anyone could really identify specifically right now. So we probably know the next 4 teams that are going to be a part of Major League Soccer expansion, and that's okay. We want to be a part of that conversation and continue to build what we're doing here in the right way and with the right knowledge and elements put in place, the stadium, our corporate relationships, engagement, our attendance, making sure we show that we're growing with our support in the stadium as well. So for us, we feel like we're going to continue to work to be the best USL team, to move ourselves in the position to be a part of that conversation with Major League Soccer. And at the time that we do have all of the pieces in place that we've talked about today, and Major League Soccer, we expect will expand again to 32 teams and potentially beyond the 32 teams. We don't know what that future looks like for this sport in 5 to 10 years. So as long as we continue to perform and with the knowledge that we have to put ourselves a part of that conversation, we feel like we're going in the right direction.
And one key date, if my memory serves me correct, is and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that the MLS TV contract, I believe, is up in 2022. Is that right? So in 2022, the MLS is going to expect to get a huge jump in their TV contract. And so I think that will play heavily in their expansion thoughts as well.
And I want to say that I want to wish the best of luck to this team, and I look forward. I'm going to go see a match, and I'm looking forward to that. But I do, again, reiterate that with this growing interest and enthusiasm, I think that the community decides whether you have a major league team or not, and I think there's the support for it here. This could be the first pro team in Louisville, but I think it should be done by the private sector. So, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
We always try to ask a question from one of the students, and this is one of the students who I believe is a soccer player. Most MLS teams now have a star player or a big name player and have succeeded by having them play and building fan enthusiasm, getting the attendance up. My question is, can you afford one? And if you can afford one, will you have a tryout? Because I'd like to try out.
I don't think Kaka is going to be here anytime soon, but it is something that we realize as a team and USL as a league as a whole, that player salaries, that's something that we're going to continue to need to look at and evaluate to compete in the sport across our league, NASL as a competing league, and then of course as Major League Soccer continues to grow, player salaries will continue to rise then. So no, we probably won't have a designated player here on the team anytime in the next couple years, but we are bringing in a nice international flair. We have 7 foreign players on our roster right now from multiple different countries, and we're getting some of the best rising stars that we anticipate. You'll see a few of these names in Major League Soccer in the coming years. So feel like we're doing the right thing. Tryouts are normally in December and January if you guys want to come out.
All right, on behalf of the entire Louisville Forum, we thank you for being here with us today. As an expression of our appreciation, we have for you a mint julep cup from the Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and we also have another special gift for this meeting. We talked about it as a board, and we decided to give Pam Greenwell a mint julep cup. She has been a wonderful board member for us and also served as membership chair for the last couple years. So she has been wonderful in that role, and we'd like to recognize her for it. So thank you, Pam. Okay, and we also want to express our appreciation to the trustees of the William E. Barth Foundation for the grant that makes it possible for students and administrators from Jefferson County Public Schools to attend our monthly meetings throughout the year. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 8th. Reservations can be made online at louisvilleforum.org or by calling our voicemail at 329-0111. Thank you.